Hello and welcome. As a spiritual woman, I know how frustrating it is to keep getting caught by worry and overwhelm, a spinning mind, or those old worn tapes, right? Maybe in your frustration, you wonder, will I ever be free of those tired old tapes? I know that I have thought that a lot of times. And the cool thing is as science discovers that these tapes are literally running our health and our body as well as our life, it gives us some kind of fleeting inspiration to get a grip, right? But then that inspiration can tend to fizzle as the old ways seem stronger than the inspiration. So, we're going to talk about these three crucial aspects that will help the inspiration lasts longer than the strength of the old tapes, so to speak. I mean, you and I are human, obviously, and human beings learn and grow in two ways. One is by way of pain and or suffering that gets our attention, right? A health problem, a heartbreak, a loss, a betrayal, resistance, right? There's actually a Japanese word for this experience, this learning by suffering, which is called kensho, and it means something like a slow burn. And we all know that one, right? There's like no big aha moment, no big bang or revelation moment where you can go, I see the light now. But it's when we look back, we can see that there has been growth, and that is via that slow burn. And the second way we learn is by way of insights and awakening. And those moments tend to be a little easier and more gentle. We all grow by a combination of both, but here's the cool thing: we can be more intentional in curating our growth by insights and purpose and direction. And actually, our sacred self, or our higher self, or our soul facilitates our journey. And if this part of us had its way, all of our growth would be by insightful awakening and less by suffering. So our sacred self is always game to elevate our health and our wellness, period. It's our human self, right, that can be stubborn and rebellious and unwilling sometimes. That's that resistance. So even when we want the thing that we want so, so much, it's like this friction, and it can be painful, right? When we invest in growing ourselves purposefully, like that kensho, our painful moments decrease and our growth by insights increase. So that's yay. That's what we're going for here. I love this quote by Brene Brown. You might have heard it, but it's a little long. But let me just pass it along to you. She says, I think midlife is when the universe gently places her hands upon your shoulder, pulls you close, and whispers in your ear, I'm not screwing around. It's time. All of this pretending and performing, these coping mechanisms that you've developed to protect yourself from feeling inadequate and getting hurt, they gotta go. Your armor is preventing you from growing into your gifts. I understand that you needed these protections when you were small. I understand that you believed your armor could help you and make you feel secure and feel worthy of love and belonging, but you're still searching and you're more lost than ever. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you. You can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through you right now. You were made to live and love with your whole heart, and it's time. Isn't that great? So, we're going to talk about these three crucial things that get you past that stubborn, unwilling, rebellious part of our mind that throws up roadblocks so we can have more smooth sailing for our heart's desire of being healthy. A warm hello to you listening live today and on the replay. Thank you so much for joining. It's really always good to be with you. You're welcome to grab a cup of tea. Cheers to your health in our time together. I really want to invite you to kind of be in the conversation. So because we're in a virtual world, if you have any comments or questions in the comments, type a capital Q before your question, and that way I'll be sure to see it. I'm going to go back after our time together and make sure all those questions and comments are answered. And I love your reactions and your emojis. It just kind of helps it feel like we're more connected So go ahead and be generous with that. It does help to engage our community. So I also, like normal, or, like the past times, if you've been on any of the other shows, I have these three crucial, I call them mistakes with their antidotes. So these are three crucial things that we need to know in order to help our mind be more in that smooth sailing way. And if you want these typed up, then just type crucial in the comments and I'll make sure that we'll message you and get those to you. If we've not yet met, I'm Lori Morse, a 30-year practitioner of Chinese medicine, director of the Sacred Health Academy, where we teach spirit-centered women struggling with fatigue, pain, and stress how to awaken your birthright of health. And yes, that is a thing. Your birthright is sacred health. So you can live with more energy, ease in your body, peace, and purpose. Everything in the physical plane, including our body, begins in the landscape of our mind. So it could be conscious or unconscious, but it begins in the mind, right? It begins in the territory of the mind. And we've heard people say things like thoughts become things, and everything in the physical realm was first a thought. And actually, thoughts instantly activate our brain chemistry. It's either activating our brain chemistry to heal and regenerate, or it activates brain chemistry to degenerate and turn into be more corrosive in our body, the chemistry. So we're wanting to be we want to curate and be directive about what the landscape of our mind holds, so that the chemicals that get released more often than not anyway are healing and regenerative. It's good to know, let's just talk about this life thing for a minute, that the creative life force is, the impulse of it is growth and development and wholeness, awakening. This is what the impulse for this life force is that's beating our heart and pumping our blood right now as we're having this conversation. So if we're not aligned with that, we're stagnant. And stagnancy left unchecked causes the pain and suffering that we were mentioning. That's kind of that slow burn. And stagnancy is simply a choice to not move forward, right? So we keep our energy and our health whole by the deliberate application of personal growth and choices. And the more we invest in growing ourselves, the less pain and suffering. Your mind is either your greatest ally, but it can also be your greatest foe. And so being aware of these crucial things about your mind, and you have a better ally at your disposal. So mistake number one, we're going to talk about three, but the first one is being disconnected from our higher mind, our higher presence, which happens to carry all the solutions, answer, medicine, guidance that we would need to bring ourselves into that more healthy and whole place. And medicine like balanced chemistry that we just talked about, hormonal balance, healthy neurotransmitters, and communication between all of our systems. We can also call this energy nature, life force, love. It's a vibration, it's a frequency of energy, and it's all the same thing. And what's important about it is that we live in continuous, harmonious connection with it. There's nothing wrong with connecting with this energy in the sannyasa part of your or shavasana, the part of your yoga class where it's like bliss, right? Everybody loves that. But my mission, what I'm devoted to, is helping you figure out ways to live in that continuous, harmonious connection all throughout the day and night, right? Because that is where we will get our greatest return on health and wholeness. So I'd also like to point out that, when we live in disconnection from that source of life, it's really stressful on the mind and on the body. And we can't keep living in that chronic state of stress. I mean, everybody knows that that's just not sustainable, right? I really love this Buckminster Fuller quote. You never change things by fighting against them. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete, right? So let's just unpack that for a minute. It's teaching us that fighting against our old mental programming continues to just get us more of the same. That's where we start feeling stuck, right? But if we just turn slightly, we can create anew which renders this old obsolete. It's just a subtle shift, right? And I don't know as humans why we insist on forcing and fighting in this old energy. It's kind of a funny thing that we do when at any point in time all we have to do is make a slight shift and create anew. Remember, the impulse of life is to create and evolve, right? So if we're stuck, that slight shift opens things up for us to create and evolve. And of course, none of this happens without our connection. So what I've learned is that 90% of the time, the old energy will eventually yield to this new choice that we're making. We make it over and over, and we'll talk about that in our next mistake that we make. So, and if this energy won't yield to this, it probably needs deeper healing. And so here's a tip. It's not necessary to treat everything, meaning all the stuff going on in your mind, all the crazy thoughts, as if they all need deeper healing. Honestly, sometimes these thoughts aren't even ours. They're just passing through the airwaves and they get stuck in our own, in our own churning, spinning state. But rather treat them as if they don't need deeper healing, but they simply need to be bathed in the energy, the life force, the light of our higher presence. And then if they persist, it'll be obvious. It'll just, well, let me back up and say, if we bathe our thoughts, and I'll give you an action step on that. If we bathe all of our thoughts in our higher presence, in a waterfall of light, I'll teach you how to do that in just a moment, then most everything falls away. I've learned that like 80 to 90% of it just gets dissolved. And the things that need deeper healing, that need our attention, that need transformation on a mental, emotional, physical level, it will become more obvious. That it will just be obvious because they won't yield to the higher connection. I promise you that. And I've said this before, but it's good to know that when we're connected to our higher presence, our higher self, our higher mind, there's a flow of life force, which happens to be light that comes into us, and that light is medicine. So the antidote to being disconnected is regularly connecting with our higher self. And it's crucial. We have to, this is a heart choice, right? We connect to our higher self in order for our mind to have the best chance of being of us having access to the healing and the regeneration that our mind is capable of offering by way of chemistry, right? So let's see here. I wanted to say, okay, let me just teach you the orb thing. So this is one of my go-to connections. I have a lot of them, but this is one I can just teach you really quick. I call it the orb of golden white light in the center of my head. So the way I do this is I imagine that from my higher presence, there's a waterfall of golden white light dropping into the top of my head and kind of being caught by a chalice in my mind, in my head, in the center of my head. And then eventually the light just sort of dissolves that chalice. It also dissolves my thoughts, and it's like a salve. It's very soothing to my spinning mind, right? And so I just, I hold my focus and my attention on this orb of light in my head. It's probably as big as my head. It has a little bit, it's alive, right? So it has a little bit of a pulsation inside my head. And I hold my focus there for as long as I need to just calm my mind. Now, what this does is it also carries truth and ideas and higher thoughts from our higher self, right? So this is how wisdom can be activated instead of always defaulting to our old programming, because that's all we're doing when we're disconnecting and our mind is churning and we're trying to make decisions. We're defaulting to our old programming, and there's not really much good there, right? So it's just, and this is not, I want to make this clear, this is not the same thing as positive thinking. Positive thinking is more like being disconnected, noticing we're in negative thinking, and then trying to strong arm ourselves into positive thinking. I'm actually not doing that, and if you play with this, you'll see that there's a difference. It's like there's something that's soothing about this. That's very different than a positive thinking thing. Okay, so and here's how you know it's from your higher mind is that it's always positive. So here's a positive. It's supportive or empowering is what I mean by positive. Always loving, and it's not loud. Like a lot of times people talk about this part of us as the still small voice. So we have to soothe our own mind. We have to calm our spinning mind down so that we can actually hear the wisdom of our higher self. Being connected to this stream more regularly throughout the day, and because you'll get really good if you decide you like this orb, this letting your mind be filled with this orb of golden white light. If you like it, you'll get really good. It'll get quicker and faster for you so that you just can do it all throughout the day. You can do it while you're doing your other tasks throughout the day. I mean, that's when it becomes really juicy, because then there's just this stream, this flow of life force from our higher presence that is moving into all the things that we're doing. It's infusing everything we're doing, and that's really what we're supposed to be doing, right? So honestly, we're either trapped in a trance of our own mental churning and programming, or we're free to explore what really is a limitless and other possible ways to create, and certainly to receive guidance and wisdom, right? And we only get that when we're in connection, right? So that's important. So mistake number 2 is forgetting that our mind learns by repetition. We have to do things like filling our mind with the orb of light over and over and over until it's our habit. It's our new habit. Our old programming is our new habit because we just kept giving our attention to it. So the mind learns by repetition, for good or for bad. So we have to, this is like one of the basics, right? It's like a lot of times when, especially as spiritual women, we forget our basics. We forget the power and the potency of a breath. We forget that repetition to the mind is food. And we kind of throw those things out the window. But could you imagine if you went to a classical concert and the pianist just decided to throw out all the foundational principles? The music wouldn't be the same, right? So the mind will fight against these foundational blocks, but the heart knows the value. So, drop into your heart space and just do it anyway until it becomes easier for you to access. So the antidote to forgetting that the mind only learns by repetition is to repeat your upgrades to yourself. Make mental conversations inside of your head and visit them over and over until what you desire not only becomes familiar to your mind, as familiar as your old programming, so you have a quick and easy reach to the new, but you do it as long as you need to until the thing you really want shows up in your life, whether that's something in your body or something that's important to you in your life, right? Your environment. And it's important to not to give a lot of your attention to this old programming. I like to just say I'm not going to pay any heed to these old beliefs and programmings, and I'm going to give my attention to this new thing I'm creating. I can't give my attention to both. So if I'm giving my attention to the old, I know what I'm going to get, right? I'm going to get what I already have. But when I'm trying to create a new, I just have to keep directing myself here, directing myself here, directing myself here. It's like teaching a dog a trick, right? We just have to keep repeating and repeating and repeating until, oh, cool, he knows how to shake now. Great, we're good, right? And so, and just continue with the internal dialogue. And oftentimes, if it's something that's a really sticky piece, harder, lots of old programming, if I feel like, oh my gosh, I'll never change this, then that's my cue that I need to I write it down, what I want my new dialogue to be, what I want my new conversations in my head to be. We know by research that when we write things down, it comes not only from our head, our higher self when connected, our heart, but then the energy moves out our hand, and it's now in another level of ourselves, right? Another layer of ourselves, and it's more powerful, and there's more chance that it will stick, if you will. So mistake number 3 is not remembering that the mind responds only to 2 things. One, the words we say to ourselves. So we just talked about these conversations in our head. If we're not speaking them out loud, then they're thoughts, right? They're thoughts in our head. They're all still words, and our mind instantly responds to them and creates chemistry. Our brain is constantly on alert for the thoughts in our mind. So we have a thought, the brain responds, there's chemistry. This all happens in like so quick you can't even, imagine. And the second thing our mind responds to is the visions and the pictures we hold in our mind. I've, over the years, had lots of women say, I'm just not visual. I can't see things in our mind. But I disagree with that. Actually, research shows that all human beings are visual. We're always seeing things in our mind. Now, when we want to see something we want, it may feel hard because the thing we have is so present in our view, so to speak, that it feels like we can't see the thing we want. But that's a muscle to build. And how we know that every human being sees things is when we're worrying, we're seeing the thing we don't want. We're seeing the thing that we're afraid is going to happen. So you do see. And so this is what I do. I see myself eating healthy. I see myself being at my ideal weight. I see myself moving in ways that I enjoy. I envision myself replacing worry with the outcome that I would rather have, like things working out well or things working out in the way I would like, right? The antidote to these 2 things, to forgetting about these 2 things, is to remember that it's our words and our pictures that create just about everything. So we, in our conscious mind, have to be directive, clear, and specific and present to what's in this precious real estate up here, right? To say the least. And, if you think that there's just way too much going on in your life or in the world to make time for these crucial 3 things that we've been talking about, I implore you to reconsider. As each of us does exactly this, tends to these 3 things, it changes the world. In fact, it's the only way to start changing the world. Humanity keeps recycling the old programming, hoping it'll make a difference, dressing it up in a new way, thinking, okay, it's changed, but it actually doesn't. It's actually the definition of insanity. We have to change. We have to shift. We have to create anew, and we need connection to our higher self in order to do that, right? Like that is we're co-creating with this part of ourselves constantly. Actually, the other day, in one of our weekly Sacred Health calls, one of the members said, this is one of the best things I've learned through Sacred Health. She said, I didn't know that by me doing my healing, that it affected the rest of the world. And I have totally, she's saying this, I've totally taken that to heart now because it means so much to me. And I just had no idea. And it's true. I mean, it matters that you're doing this for yourself, but it also happens to make a difference in the collective consciousness, right? Here's another quote by Buckminster Fuller. Humans always, no, let me start over. Human beings always do the most intelligent thing after they've tried every stupid alternative and none of them have worked. Isn't that the truth? Oh my gosh. So just as a reminder, type the code word crucial if you want these 3 things written down. I know I'm talking fast and we're going through this quickly. So if you want them all written down, let me know and I'll get them to you. So let's recap real quick. We talked about how everything begins in the landscape of the mind, and that works in our favor or against us, right? And I picked out 3 things, so we're going to recap those. But I just want you to know that in the Medicine Vault of Sacred Health Academy, there are videos and audios and PDFs, and I picked out what I thought were the 3 most crucial things. So one is for any human being to have access to ideas, solution, and healing beyond their own repetitive programming. We've got to connect to our higher mind, our higher self, and our higher presence. It's a must. Number 2 is remembering that the mind learns by repetition, for good or for bad. That's how we have our old programming and our habits, is that we've repetitively given our energy and our attention to them. And so, in order to create something new, we just keep shifting ourselves to something that we're being directive about, right? And number three, the mind responds only to two things: the words or thoughts in our head and the pictures in our head. So let me know in the comments if this is making sense to you. Let me know if something has popped for you that might make it easier to tame your own mind. I'd love to hear, and what I know is if you don't give up, you can do it. And this is what we're designed to do, right? So everybody can do it if we just keep, giving ourselves, if we just don't give up, right? So I will be back next week on Wednesday, same time, same place. And next week, I thought I would take you on a virtual tour of the Sacred Health Academy. We've been talking about all these different puzzle pieces. We talked about kicking stress to the curb. We talked about dopamine, the neurotransmitter that allows for our brain and our body to feel happy. And then today we talked about these three crucial mistakes and their antidotes. And so I thought I would take you kind of behind the scenes so you can see how all these puzzle pieces fit together in the larger puzzle. So I look forward to seeing you and sharing that with you next week. Until then, a sacred health journey, know this: a sacred health journey is yours to take. I'm here to make sure you don't miss your heart calling you home to this health and wholeness. One step at a time on this path gets you more energy, less pain, less stress and worry, the nutritional lifestyle that maybe you've been trying to make work, but best of all, your birthright of peace and purpose, all without spending years, too much time, too much money on therapy, supplements, toxic chemicals, but knowing that with health, life is beautiful. Without it, life is hard and it kind of sucks, right? Especially because it's our design to be well and to thrive. So thank you for being you and for tending to your sacred health. It matters to you as